Hey everyone, appreciate you all joining and tuning in for the Indie Coach podcast. This is where creatives and entrepreneurship collide. And today I am happy to have a entrepreneur, real estate, but has a litany of different background options. We have Dr. Adam Gower that we've connected on LinkedIn. I've been following him and reading a lot of his stuff, and he just brings a wealth of knowledge. His posts are very engaging, entertaining. And so I'm honored that he was able to join us. But Adam, if you wouldn't mind, would you just kick us off maybe with an introduction, a little bit of your background? There's definitely, I can see some entrepreneur creative element back in the history of what you've done. So I'd love to turn it over to you to maybe kick us off with your background.
Well, I'm super happy to be here, Ron. Thank you. It's been a pleasure interacting on
Thank
LinkedIn.
you.
Sure, it's good to get to know you over there. So, entrepreneurship. Oh my goodness. Where does one even start with? I mean, I've got a whole script for how I started in real estate. So let me try and contextualize entrepreneurship. I'm not sure if this is exactly what you're asking.
No, yeah, great.
I'm
Let's
just
go
going to
with it.
jump in. I started my career always as an employee. I was always looking for a job, but I always approached the jobs that I got from an entrepreneurial perspective, but never really had the courage in my earlier years to take that big leap from the cocoon, if you like, of an employer in this kind of belief that, they'll look after you for your whole life, which they never do. But I've always been an entrepreneur. And my, but it's always been in real estate, almost always in real estate. I've had a couple of, excursions along the way, but mostly in real estate. And I think that I get, well, so I'm not really sure what your question is. You just want to know more about me, right? Or
Yeah,
do you have a
exactly. Yeah,
specific
just kind of a
question?
background. Because obviously your education must have been important to you, and you have just a very diverse background. From it looks like you were over in Japan for a while and worked for the entertainment business, kind of
Yeah.
adjacent in this unique way. So anything you would like to
All right.
the audience to
So I
know about you?
started my life, uh, my work life, absolutely as an entrepreneur. I literally knocked on doors. It was brain damage. This is a long time ago, 40 odd years ago, when I was in university or straight out of high school.
Yeah.
And I knocked on doors and I asked people if so here's something I actually learned really early on. I would ask people, I'd tell people, I would like to say, I knocked on doors of people in the neighborhood. And when they opened the door, I'd say, I live there, that house, right? It's just, and everyone, they'd always have a look to see, right? So it kind of built this sense of comfort. Oh, yeah, all right. You know where I live. I know where you live. And what I started with my conversations was, I'll do anything for $5 an hour. This was a long time ago. And whenever I said just that, people 90% of the time said, no, nothing, we don't want anything. We're good. But what I learned was that if you give them a list of ideas, and by the way, this translates exceptionally well into some of the really big stuff that I do today. If you give them a list, there's always something on that list that they think, oh, yeah, I could use that. So instead of saying I'll do anything for $5 an hour, it's too broad. I'd pause or put a comma on the end of that. For example, paint your house, stain a deck, clean your house, do yard work. I put a whole list together.
Yeah.
And their initial reaction is always, no, nothing. But when you give them a list, it's like, oh, yeah, there is that thing at the back that needs painting. All right, come along, take a look. And then they'd see the quality of my work and they'd give me more work. And
Yeah.
I found that actually works very well in sales. And I just stumbled across that. It was like, I had to survive. So I had to figure out how to get people to say yes. But it works very well in the kind of sales that I do now. For example, if I'm selling something, I'll always put a list of who it's for. Or if you want, it's kind of a key language pattern, right? If you want, of course, my business is real estate. So I'll use some crass kind of cliched terms, but the same principle. If you want passive income, if you want tax benefits, if you want to build your wealth, those are kind of the cliches, the three main cliches. But that's how people react. If you just say to somebody, do you want to invest in real estate? Their mind goes everywhere, right? It's like, well, no, I don't. I'm busy. I've got stocks.
Right.
But you might trigger a different thought process in the sales process by presenting benefits or ideas. Yeah, tax benefits. What do you mean tax benefit? How does that work? What do you mean tax benefit? Now you've got a conversation. So that's how I started, literally knocking on doors.
Yeah.
From there, I started knocking on doors again. I wanted to get into venture capital. I wanted a job with a venture capital fund. Again, it's a long time ago. So I went to the library. I got a book that had a list of all the VC firms across the country. And I sent letters to all of them. That's a whole long story how I did that in those days with I don't know how old you are. You've got a hat on, so I can't say how many gray hairs you've got. But I rented a Brother typewriter, had a memory. It was a trip and a half. So I could type a letter, refine it, and then hit go, and it would type the whole thing again.
Cool.
So that's how I did it. And then I signed each one. It was like a whole thing.
Yep.
So I sent out a letter to venture capital companies, went and visited those that responded positively, and eventually got a job, actually, through that effort. But it was the same principle that I don't remember what was in the letter. I've probably got copies of it buried away somewhere, Ron. Seriously, I'm like a pack rat. I've got everything I've ever sent. But I probably had some kind of value that I was proposing. That's something else I've learned in my entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah.
Is always bring value.
Yeah.
When you're asking for something, bring value first.
Right.
And by the way, you said we could spend an hour, however it goes. I'm good at just kind of whiffling on, going down rabbit holes. So stop at any time. But one thing that I learned, again, I think it's a very entrepreneurial mentality. I moved to a new town. This is just maybe 10 years ago. And I wanted to get to know all the players in town, right? And again, in my industry, in real estate, you can apply this to any business or any endeavor. And there are two ways of approaching that. One way is to call all the people, all the bigwigs in town, the lawyers and the accountants and the engineers and the sponsor, the developers and whoever it is in real estate, and say, I'm new to town. I'd love to come and meet you and find out, talk to you. Who's got time for that? Nobody has got time for that.
No one.
So what I decided to do instead, and I've done this throughout my career, was instead I decided to go out and find a deal. So I first went to some brokers and I found some land that I wanted to develop. It was actually downtown.
Okay.
And now I've got something of interest. So I called all the architects and said, I got a deal I'm working on downtown. I'd like to get your feedback on what, maybe we can work. Maybe you'd like to do this project with me. Immediately they want to, like, okay, sure, they'll come and see me.
Of course.
During that conversation, this is all about networking, I guess. But during that conversation, I'd always get to know them, figure out if they were capable, understand how much they knew, got some deep insights from them that were unique to their experience of the town, and always asked for references. In other words, okay, I need an engineer. Who should I be talking to? Then I went to talk to all the engineers. And who are the big developers in town? Who are like the big players in town? So they'd rattle those off. I call them, same story. I'm working on a deal. Interested to know if you'd like to work on it with me. And as a consequence, in a very short period of time, I was able to get to know everybody that I needed to know in order to and establish a relationship with them on something that was actually tangible and potentially of value to them in a
Yeah.
very short period of time.
Right.
In the end, the deal didn't happen because it was a bank that was selling it, didn't sell it. But one of the guys actually offered me a job, which I took in the end, not looking for a job. But I took it anyway just to get started. So those are, I guess, two stories about
Yeah.
my.
No, I love it. Yeah. I mean, the immediately I picked up the value add. Um, First bringing a deal, you're bringing in, and again, that just kind of also is another way to say value add networking. So you're not just leaving it there. You're always asking about insider information of who should I be speaking to? Is there anybody else? And warm leads are always way better than cold leads. So getting like a connection point, no, all that is great stuff. But ultimately, you've landed in real estate, and do you do investing yourself, or do you look for the deals and then kind of pull the deals together?
So I invest on my own account, but my
Okay.
business is not that. My business is entirely entrepreneurial, right? We are basically digital marketers. I mean,
Hmm.
it's because I've been in real estate all my life. It's always been a slight struggle to say I have a digital marketing agency or a
Right.
marketing
Right.
agency. That is what we do.
Okay.
So what I do these days is, and I'll try and keep this short and sweet without getting too deep into the weeds, but basically, when a real estate professional wants to buy a building, add value to it, or build a building, they get two forms of capital, debt from the bank and then equity. They need to bring a down payment, right? If you bought a house, a down payment.
Yeah.
Well, those can run into millions or tens of millions of dollars.
Sure.
And most developers or sponsors don't have that kind of money. So what they need to do is to find individual investors, $25,000 at a time, to come and join them as a partner in this project. So they might have 400 investors in a $50 million deal, right? They
Sure.
get the debt, they put in their money, they get investors and that. So what I do is I build digital marketing systems to help them find those investors and raise money from those investors. So it's
Okay.
all about communication and education. Bringing it's the same principle, Ron. I mean, basically, when you meet somebody, if you want to invest, again, if you got examples, I can drill down. The only one I really know is real estate. But if you're trying to meet somebody you want them to invest $50,000 in your deal because you're raising 10 million, you
Right.
don't start off that relationship with here's the contract and here are the wiring instructions. It's nice to meet you. You don't do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
You have to establish a relationship with them. And the
Right.
way you establish a relationship with them, and this applies to absolutely really any business, it doesn't matter what business you're in at all, you have to first bring value. You bring something of value to people so that they start to see you as an authority, as a thought leader, as an expert in your field. And over a period of time, they will establish a relationship with you without you actually knowing who they are, right? That first contact for me with prospective clients, they've already done huge amounts of research on me. They go to my website, they look me up on LinkedIn, they see me on podcasts, they see me in the press, they run Google searches, right? Old school, but they run Google searches and I pop up and they click on links and they establish a relationship with me. They come to know, like, and trust me. So when I speak to them, they don't ask, they're predisposed to engaging in business with me. And any entrepreneur really, it doesn't really matter what business you're in, has to go through that process. Otherwise, you can't really scale effectively.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. What got you into real estate? Have you tried other avenues, other areas of interest to invest in?
So I do my own, like I said, I do some private investing. I don't buy, I don't go on title anymore. I don't buy buildings. I don't want to deal with it. I invest with other people who do, who
Got it.
go out to raise $25,000 at a time. So I find people like that who I trust and I invest with them. So I'm very passive in that.
Right.
Um, just to be clear on that, I have done my own developments, but I also have had a couple of diversions along the way. I lived after uh, so after doing anything for $5 an hour. I eventually worked for an electrician, and then eventually from there was hired by a ground up multifamily apartment builder who wanted me to help them raise money. And then I ended up in Japan. It's a long story. And I ran a
Wow.
division of Universal Studios. I did all of their real estate development. That was 100% entrepreneurial. I was basically left on my own
Wow.
in Japan. Everybody, all the other senior people in the company were all in Hollywood, right? In
Wow.
California, basically. And so they just let me do my thing to build this company, which I did I had a secretary when I took the job and 150 staff when I finished.
Holy cow.
But when I got back from Japan, I was actually headhunted. It was a very short burst it was actually it was a content production, Japanese content production company.
Interesting.
And they had this process for creating cartoons and all kinds of things. So I worked on that. That was just a side. I don't usually talk about it. It was short and sweet. It was right during the dot-com bubble or
Yeah,
the dot-com
I
bust.
remember.
And
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to sell my shares in the company right before the thing
Oh,
hit.
geez. Good
So
for
I got
you. Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, continue with your questions because I'm having to be candid, not
Yeah.
talking just about real estate. I'm
Yeah.
struggling. I want to be absolutely sure on that
Yeah.
I'm
No,
on
I
target
appreciate
with
that.
your audience and bringing value to them. Seriously.
No, thank you for that. No, certainly. And I think a lot of times people they kind of distance the creative on the outside and they're very much close to not only trying to do their own endeavors but looking at other means so that they can get their own capital to free themselves up to kind of do what they want. And that's one of the other reasons why I broadened it out to just creatives. But if you have a creative entrepreneur that comes to you seeking advice for funding, what would that look like? Any thoughts that come up besides of what you've kind of laid out, which I think are already really good about bringing value add, etc. From a creative entrepreneur, um, and yeah, they're kind of needing funding, looking for funding, be it either it's a startup or they have a film project or a book they want to get done. Any thoughts there?
Yes, the principles of what I do for my clients, real estate professionals who want to raise capital, apply universally to any industry and to any endeavor, including creatives and making a movie or whatever it is. They're exactly the same. In fact, most of the principles that I apply are taken from outside of real estate. I've
Right.
just looked at best of class practices from the universe of digital marketing and then apply them to my niche.
Okay.
So the overriding principles are uniform and consistent, doesn't matter what you're doing.
Right.
So, with that said, the first thing you've got to have is a website that is loaded with educational content that explains what it's doing, explains your background, your track record, why you're doing what you're doing, explains all the concepts and the terms of art. Don't assume that anybody knows, by the way, I don't know anything about movie making, but what a grip is,
Yeah.
or how a movie is produced. How is
Right.
a movie produced? What is a producer?
Yeah.
What's a director? Like, how do these positions differ? And how do the finances of a movie come together? What do those look like? How have they evolved over time? Why do you like the way that you're structuring it? Particularly, I'm sure there's all kinds of ways that you would do it.
Yeah.
So the first thing you want to have on a website, picking this movie example, is content, either and or video and or written articles that explain exactly what it is that you do in considerable detail, not just one article, but a whole series of articles. And the best way to think about what to write is to think about, if you're trying to finance a movie, you're probably talking to a bunch of people and they're asking you questions. And the chances are that those prospects are asking you consistently the same questions. And
Right.
you're answering the same questions again and again and again. Your FAQs, your frequently asked questions, list them up and create detailed content answering each one of those frequently asked questions. That way, what happens is that when somebody hears your name, what are they going to do? They're going to come to your website.
Right.
They're going to look around. They might see something that says an article that piques their interest,
Yep.
different ways to produce a movie, right? Or the financial structure of a movie.
Right.
How do the economics of a movie work, right? That'll be an amazing article to have. They'll read through that. They'll learn a few things. They'll learn about how to finance a movie, but they'll also learn that you know how to finance a movie, that you actually are that expert. And inside that and all of your other articles, another key thing to have for anybody is a call to action. And that call to action should be, give me your name and email address, please. Now, you might motivate somebody to do that by saying, and I will give you the white paper and the spreadsheet, right? Or whatever on how to make a movie in return for your name and email address, but you wouldn't word it that way.
Right. Right.
Now, what happens when somebody triggers that or completes a form that says, here, get this cool thing in return for your name and email address, is it will trigger automated emails. And those automated emails will nurture your prospects through some of the key concepts that you want them to know about you and about what you're doing, but on autopilot, right? So you might have 3 or 4 or 5 emails that go out in a certain sequence that could draw people back to your website and say, here, read this article or watch this video or download this white paper, whatever, to learn more about us. Because then that establishes, that helps to nurture the relationship and establish a relationship with your prospect. Now, at this point, chances are you're not going to know even who they are
Yeah.
until you send them an email and say, whatever you want to say, we've got a funding closing on Friday,
Yeah.
act now or miss out.
Right.
So kind of basic principles. Oh, and you also need to have a good social media presence. And I don't know for a movie maker what that would be, if it's LinkedIn or some other, Instagram or some other platform that might be more relevant for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Facebook, Instagram are probably not really so much as LinkedIn. However, if you're a producer, that is more on the business side of things. So that does kind of lean towards LinkedIn. Where do you see people that need capital blowing it? Where are they making mistakes? Where do they step on landmines? And when you get a client that's coming in looking to get an investor pool for a deal that they have, where do you see them kind of not hitting where they need to be? And you're like, man,
Yeah.
we need
Well,
to get this up for you.
Ron, seriously, I mean, attempting to do it one person at a time, it's how it used to be done in
Yeah.
real estate and actually in other industries as well. The Jobs Act of 2012, which opened up the world of what's called general solicitation, where you can invite anybody to invest with you, whether you know them or not. That opened up in 2012 and was never intended for real estate. It was intended for small and medium businesses to raise money and have more investors and partners and whatever. Real estate benefited accidentally. So the biggest mistake that people make is trying to do it one person at a time. It's so inefficient.
Hmm.
You used to have to do it that way because the law didn't allow you to do it any other way.
Right.
But now you can automate all of these processes. And you
Hmm.
really should. It doesn't mean that you will stop working on trying to raise money.
Right.
You'll still spend time on that process,
Right.
and you might spend as much time. The difference is that you are leveraging digital marketing to scale. And
Yeah.
that means instead of speaking to one person at a time, you can speak to everyone at the same time
Yeah.
and allow them to self-select. That's why it's called a funnel.
That's right.
Allow them to self-select how and when they want to actually engage with you. So that's the biggest mistake is just picking up the phone and, hey, can I introduce you? And like, why
Yeah.
would you do
Yeah.
that now
Yeah.
when you can have people come to you and say, I want to invest with you instead of going out and asking people?
Yeah, no, definitely agree with you. You're spot on. I need to do that more myself, and getting the automation, getting things that are responsive with the technology that we have. Obviously, in the digital marketing world, everybody's talking about AI and the advantages. In the film world, they're talking about it from a different lens of generative AI. That's usually what they're afraid of and kind of concerned with. But there are plenty of AI tools that are having an extreme positive impact in the industry, of which it's changing the landscape for marketing. And the way I see marketing is simply storytelling for a particular company, product, whatever it might be. It's the story part of it. How do you see like that type of technology, be it AI or even blockchain? Do you have any play in that yet? Have you
I
gotten
do.
any feel with that?
Yeah, yeah. So I don't spend much time on blockchain, but I've been super engaged in AI.
Gotcha.
Uh, it is fundamentally changing the world. I mean, it's the speed at which it's changing. I cannot now imagine not using AI in my
Yeah,
daily life. I
right.
use it all the time. It's like having a personal assistant who you can ask a question. And what I like about it the most, I mean, I've got a huge, I don't know, huge, a 25-person team that I tap into. And usually you send them a task and wait for an email. Or if we're using Asana to do some workflows, yeah, we got to wait for that. And there's a backup. I use ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Claude. And you put in a question and it answers instantly. It
Instantly.
is
Crazy.
perfectly synced with my workflow. So
Right.
no break, right? And if it's not quite right, I can adjust it. It's
Exactly.
like having a super intelligent personal assistant there helping at all times. I use it all the time. Um, uh, I think that you have to embrace it. If you don't embrace it and understand it, you'll just fall behind. I don't care what industry you're in. It's
Yeah.
changing the world so quickly. Uh, um, for example, so you're talking about movies. So if that's your focus, that's good because I actually used to build movie theaters when I
Awesome.
was in the studio, so I do know a little bit about that.
Yeah.
But one of my friends, coincidentally from Japan days, so it's an old friend from a long time ago. He is a foreign exchange wizard, right? He's one of the most highly sought after bankers
Oh,
uh,
cool.
who talks about high level FX stuff. And he wants to I'm not sure if he wants to go out on his own, but he wants to start selling training, high level training
Of course.
for
Yeah.
foreign exchange traders. And so I lost my train of thought. And so I've been talking to, I've totally lost my train of thought. Like I've go off on these tangents. And I forgot what your question was. What was your question again? Do you remember where you started? And I'll remember how to get back on track.
Really, it was around kind of the AI and blockchain,
That's right.
any type of, here comes the tech. And I think you're spot on to indicate we've got to embrace it. Maybe here's how, what, and all that. So really going down the AI rabbit
He's
hole.
got this idea that he's going to produce, and I know how to do this. We've been doing this so far. He's going to produce training courses
Yep.
using text that he's going to create clones of himself teaching
Okay. Yep. Yep.
in 24 languages.
In every language. Yeah.
It is absolutely mind-blowing
Crazy.
the way that what you could do. And it's I've been testing some of these platforms for it, and it is remarkable. People, native speakers say, "Oh yeah, it's the accent is perfect." The terminology used maybe more for written language rather than spoken, but fully understandable and perfect.
Exactly.
That's
And gonna get better. Like it's
constantly
learning
getting better.
all the time. So it's going to get a sweet spot. And that also translates into films. You're going to be able to translate movies that fast with the actors you have on screen. They already have AI technology to move the lips in the right way,
Yes.
and the accents sound amazing. And yeah, is it 100% there? Probably not, but it's going to be. That's the value of AI.
So here's an idea. Hang on, let me share.
Yeah,
Can I share a thought with you?
sure.
So I was talking about AI with one of my sons, and he said, "Well, if you can program AI, or you can run a prompt in AI to create a painting that is as good as Van Gogh or Rembrandt or whatever, doesn't that flatten the playing surface? And now, if everybody can create art that's as good as the great artists throughout history, what is art anymore?" Well, here's what it is, and this is how I answered it. You could make the same case for a palette of paint, right, with a dozen colors on it. Everybody's had access to that resource throughout history, but only really, really great creators have been able to do things with that palette of paint
Right.
that have resonated with millions of people.
Right.
The same is going to be true with AI. We
Yeah.
all have access to
Yeah.
all these tools now, and they
Right.
are evolving. We all do.
Right.
So why are there no great Rembrandts suddenly emerging? That those who are able to use these tools
Yeah.
in the most creative way and to figure out how to use them in a way that maybe hasn't been conceived before, or they are the ones that will stand out in the same way as painters have stood out in the past. It's just a tool that you can use to explore your own creativity and
Right.
and express that to get a reaction from an audience.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. And it's exactly the way I see it. And look, right now everybody has access, and yet I go on LinkedIn and I'm only seeing about two, maybe three people that really have pulled something together other than just a still image or a 3-second video. There's like three people that I know have been able to parse scenes together and actually form a little bit of a story, not millions of people. And I'm connected to a ton of people. And yet out of all of those, only about three. Relationship building is obviously an essential component to finding potential capital, but also in the creative world, finding your fans and your landscape. You use, it seems to me, LinkedIn very, very well. Any thoughts about, you've talked a little bit about building relationships already, but any thoughts about building relationships?
Yes, I do. And the word that I have written down to remind myself how to answer your question as you started asking it was authenticity.
Hmm.
Don't try to act a role that
Hmm.
you think people want you to have. Be yourself. Be true to yourself. And I will tell you, it's easier said than done, actually. All right, because we're bombarded with messaging all the time. You've got to be skinny, you've got to have a suntan, you've got to drive this car, you've got to live in this neighborhood, whatever it is. We're
Right,
constantly being told we're doing it wrong, right? And
right,
here's how to do it right.
right.
So tuning into who you really are and your true perspective of the world, and then articulating that without fear of judgment
Yeah.
is an absolute key to success online. And I'll explain to you why it works and how it works. Ron, you are an American, so you presumably were educated here. I was educated in the United Kingdom. So in the UK, we called it the normal curve. In the United States, I think it's called the bell curve.
Bell curve.
You
Yep.
remember that? Right. So the bell curve is a description of standard deviation, right? So you've got the bulk of people along the middle, the mean or the median. I forgot, I can't
Yeah.
remember. I think it's
Yeah,
the mean.
right.
Everyone's around the mean.
Yeah.
As you move away from that, you end up in with far, far fewer people.
Right.
So three standard deviations, you're at 99, like 0.1% of people are on
Right.
the are outliers. Now, if you're meeting people one-on-one, you've got to establish a relationship with them right there and then and figure out, are they somebody that I'm going to be able to work with? It's incredibly time consuming. If you're doing it online, you're dealing with literally millions of people. So the bell curve comes into play. What that means is that on the left side of the curve, if you're authentic to who you are, and like you've got a baseball hat on and a cool statue behind you, whatever, and I've got a whiteboard by me and a white shirt, people are going to look at us and there will be those who think those guys are the biggest losers on the planet, right? Those are the people on the left side of the bell curve.
Right.
They're never going to do business with you.
Right.
But for every one of those, there's somebody on the other side of the curve who thinks you are the coolest thing they've ever seen. And they are just waiting for you to invite them to do business with you.
Yeah.
So what you have to do is have confidence that whoever you are and whoever your ideal customer is, or your ideal investor, or your ideal client, who is that? But actually picture that person in your mind. Define who that person is. If you've got a picture of somebody who looks like the ideal candidate, put it up in front of you and only communicate with language geared to that person.
Yeah.
Because what will happen if you do that is you will attract people like that. You're never going to get everybody, but you will attract the ideal person. There will, like I said, there'll be those that just don't like anything you've got to say.
Right.
And you'll get FU emails occasionally.
Right.
Whenever my clients get an FU email, I just think, boom, that's a win. Because for that one, there's somebody on the other side who's got their checkbook out ready to write a check.
That's right.
So you know doing it right. So that's my answer. And again, I forgot the question, but
No, it was you were spot on. It's building relationships and it's that
yes.
authenticity. And you even went into a little bit of having that customer profile avatar that you can really fixate on, and you're not speaking to everyone. You're speaking to a specific group, a persona, if you will, that you've put down, that you know that who you should be going after, and then trying to be authentic. And I actually have a master's in counseling, and I only bring that up because it is a lot harder than you think to be authentic, and to really go out on your own. I mean, like you said, even like the ball cap, I usually you try to make myself look professional, but my day job got away from me before I knew it. Here I am, and it's either go or don't go, and I'm just going to put myself forward and just go for it. And so I appreciate that sentiment, is to be yourself, because you can get imposter syndrome quickly. You can get into anytime you're looking for capital, it's a hard ask. Those relationship buildings need to be authentic. You can't just go in and kind of go through the room only looking at what can that person give me, and then, oh, they can't serve me, so move on. I talked to a guy today, a potential investor. It was an institutional investor, so it wasn't a right fit. But I told him, I know 3 people right now that I could point you to, and I'll do that. And he was shocked. He was an international guy, and he was shocked that I was willing to forward his contact information on to help him out. And I said, absolutely. So that authenticity, of course, it doesn't need to come around to me, but I know it will at some point, either through him or not. It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
You're doing the right thing.
Yes. Let me jump in actually. So you mentioned LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I'll tell you something that I've learned about LinkedIn. So short story, I've come to LinkedIn. We used to do a lot of advertising on Facebook. Lead quality is appallingly low. I decided, all right, I'm going to give everything I've got to LinkedIn. I've done this over the last 3-4 months.
Notice that your account is on point.
It's changed. Yeah, dramatically in the last few months. I'm so glad you've noticed, Ron. Thank you.
Yes, it's on point.
So, and I've developed a system. And I'm actually teaching a mastermind. This podcast will
Oh,
go out
cool.
afterwards, I think, but I got a mastermind coming out.
Awesome.
Love you to participate if you want to.
Awesome. Wow. Thank you.
It's coming up in a couple of right after Thanksgiving. But here's what I've learned. So I used to have terrible imposter syndrome,
Mm.
really bad, actually. And there was something that happened that got me over it, like a light switch. But that's a separate thing. For those that don't have those light switches, right, that you can suddenly discover your true inner self
Yeah.
and be able to express yourself. What I've learned on LinkedIn, I love commenting. I love commenting. I
Yeah.
love, you see people, they put these kind of blah responses to, and by the way, there's a whole system for finding the right people to comment on and to talk to and create these spheres, what I call spheres of influence and blah, blah. It's a whole different topic. But once you got that down and you see people and they say something, put a post out, I'm really honest about how I see what they say. I really put thought
Yeah.
into my comments. I don't just put game changer. I see a lot of game changer. Yeah, whatever, big deal. I try to put real thought into it. And oftentimes that involves humor because actually I always generally, not always, I like to see the funny side of life, the
Yeah.
bright side of life.
Yeah.
And so and it helps me not only establish relationships with people who react positively to that style, because that's who I am, right? If I was sitting here having a glass of beer with you or something, I'd be exactly like that with my friends, right? But in a business environment.
Yeah.
But it also helps me craft my posts in the style that I want them to have, that is reflective not just of the content, but of the way that I want to express myself. So I
Yeah.
actually really find it a fabulous place to communicate. By the way, one last thought on that. They call it a social media platform. It isn't. It's a business casual platform. That's how I see it. It's not social.
Right.
It's business casual.
Right.
And if you think in those terms, it's really a great place to be, to meet people, to network, and to engage in actual business discussions.
Yeah. In the last, I have to say, year, maybe two, LinkedIn, I think, I don't know if it was them intentionally. I mean, I, I might not be giving credit properly, but I don't think it was. I think just it ended up becoming a place where people were serious about business and wanted to have those discussions and a place to go to. And I think they defaulted to LinkedIn. And suddenly I noticed that the conversations were becoming much more robust and real and authentic. And I saw people doing actual business and taking it to the next level. And I guess this was LinkedIn, they opened up the ability to write things and newsletters and save stuff. Like, I don't know how many articles I've saved. Posting, like you're saying, replying became much more available and people were engaged. Because when you don't see anything, it's kind of hard, like, do I, don't I? But when people really find something fascinating, that's the other thing. As the poster, I found out where the audience is responding and engaging. And LinkedIn is really, I must say, done a transformation in my mind and have nailed it. And it's probably, a little bit of both. People are wanting that, craving that, but they were at the right place at the right time for sure.
Yeah, and I'd say I'm also glad. I'm not really sure how it's happened that way. It's not through some kind of group think process because there's tens, if not hundreds of millions, maybe even a billion people on LinkedIn. So I'm not really sure how it's worked.
Right.
But I almost never see anything that is not in some way business oriented.
Yes.
People don't post silly cat video, funny
No,
cat video,
no,
there's like a sense
there is.
of people on LinkedIn that this is for business
That's
engagement
right.
serious. It's not like Twitter. There's a lot of political noise or
Right, exactly.
Facebook or any of the
No,
other platforms.
no,
It's a
very different.
safe place to do business.
It is.
It's a nice environment.
I've seen people get called out. In fact, when I saw like a little
Yeah.
kitty video, they got called out in a nice
Yeah.
professional way. But just,
Right.
hey, if you're going to post that, there's Facebook.
Facebook.
LinkedIn is
Exactly. Wrong place for that.
wrong
Exactly.
place.
Yeah.
Um, invariably people, you talked about this, and I wanted to just kind of maybe retouch on it. The call to action
Hmm.
is so difficult for people, particularly when investors can be intimidating. You need the money. You're trying not to look desperate. You've got all these things going through your head. You need to go through 100 no's to get the one, that type of thing. But there has to be invariably a close or a call to action. In your experience, what any advice or thoughts or guidance on what you find would be helpful or beneficial, or here's what I'd like to see when people are pitching me, anything on the close or call to action?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. And I'm sure there are better people than I to articulate what I'm going to say. But what I have found, so the way that I think about the call to action, by the way, we're talking about the sharp edge of or the tip of the arrow, right?
Yeah.
We've had all these conversations, tip of the arrow stuff.
Yeah.
By the way, call to action, every single conversation you have and every single piece of content you put out on social media, on your website, there should always be a call to action. Always,
Hmm.
always ask whoever is engaging with your content to do the next thing, whatever it is. Give me a call, download the doc, learn more, whatever, right? You should
Yeah.
always sign up. You should
Yeah.
always have a call to action of some
Yeah.
sort, or always have a point at the end of anything. But what you're talking about, I think, is something a bit different. What I have figured is that there comes a time when I feel like I have maybe shared enough. In my mind, I think, all right, this prospect knows enough. There's
Mhm.
not much more I can share. I
Yeah.
don't really want to spend much more time.
Right.
So, okay, what's our next step? Can I send you the proposal? Can I send you a proposal?
Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever had anyone say no.
Right.
So I'll send a proposal, follow up, and they either die on the, what do you call it? Die on
On the
the
vine.
on the vine.
Yeah.
They either die on the vine or they sign us up.
They pony up. Yeah.
Like always, yeah, always ask. Here's another thing that's kind of cool, actually. I was talking to a mentor of mine some years ago, and he said, yeah, when people contact you, ask this question: what can I do for you? Or how can I help you? It
Yeah.
was something like something, what can I do for? What do you want? Right? Basically,
Yeah.
super direct.
Yeah.
I have found that that actually is an incredible question to ask. Nobody never comes across as being rude. I'll
Yeah.
get really long emails sometimes from people. It's like, all right, how can I help you? Or
Yeah.
what can I do for you?
Right.
And that's all I say, John. What can I do for you? Not sure what I can do for, or
Yeah.
tell me what can I do for you, Adam. And then they'll come back and suddenly they'll reveal. It forces them to
Yeah.
articulate why it was they contacted you and helps them to define what it is. And that is very helpful in determining whether or not you want to spend any more time with them. But I think that the most important answer to your question is always have a call to action. Every single conversation, kind
Like
of
that.
follow up with a phone call, send you an email, right?
Yeah.
At the end of this call, I'm going to invite you to join my LinkedIn training,
I
for
love it.
example,
Yeah. I
because
love
you
it. Yeah.
definitely benefit from it.
Exactly.
But always have a call to action. By the way, that's a bit crude, isn't it? I mean,
No, no. In fact, funny enough, in two questions, I'm going to ask you that very thing.
oh, good. I'm so glad. It works so well, Ron. I'm
Yeah.
serious. I'm not like go. It works so well, and the more people that participate, the better it works. It's like
Right.
you got to do it. The more and more people.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
anyway, so
Yeah.
go
No,
on.
I definitely appreciate that. So the, one question, and then I do want to get to where people can find you and
Go on.
connect with you. But, and this could also be your own stuff. Do you have any books or training? And we've already mentioned the training, so we definitely have some of that. But do you have any books, either your own or that you could recommend for entrepreneurship, or just in general? And then any training that you could say, hey, you know what? that was good, be it from yourself or something you took?
Yeah, I can. So there's a couple things that oops, let me just open, let's just make sure it's still on my website. I gotta have a quick look because I change things around all the time. So there is one book that I wrote that is uh geared to real estate sponsors. However, the principles
Yeah.
are consistent. It doesn't matter. You could replace the word real estate with
Yep.
making movies,
Right.
whatever.
Right.
Right. It
Right.
really could be anything.
Right.
It's called Syndicate or Syndicate. It's
No,
on my website, which is gowercrowd.com. You got to scan down the page, but there's a book called Syndicate there. The picture, when you click on that link, is it looks like my high school graduation picture. Really old one. I need to change it.
nice.
But so just look through the how to raise money for real estate. The book is written is a book on optimal structure for a website for raising capital, but it really could be for selling anything, right? You're selling a deal because you want to raise capital, but
Right.
you want to finance a movie or whatever you're
Right.
challenging, or sell FX, right?
Right.
FX training for foreign
Right.
exchange training. The
Right.
same thing applies. It describes all the key components you should have on your website, and it's very detailed. Plus, it actually comes with some free training,
Oh,
72 minutes
oh, awesome.
a book, and then there's also with me where I walk through the whole process in detail.
Oh, outstanding.
I don't think there's any other bonuses there, but yeah, it's really good. I mean, I've written I don't know 7 or 8 books. I think some of them have been published by big publishers, top 3 publishers, but I've written several that I've self-published, and of all of them, with the exception of one, maybe it's 120,000 word book that sells for, I don't know, $200. I don't know why they priced it. It's a bloody publisher.
College, that they were hoping for college to pick it up.
Yeah, they were. It's that level of
Yeah.
peer review type of stuff.
Yeah.
But of all of the others, Syndicate is by far the best.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's a cool name. And just so you know, because I think I was telling you maybe even before the call, I've gotten into real estate myself very early in my journey. I just
Mm.
knew at some point I wanted to explore it. So I do have quite a good bit of contacts in the real estate business, and I'm going to be eager to pass this podcast on to them
Okay, good.
as well as the book. So in kind of wrapping up, because I know we're coming down to it, Adam, but where can people find you? Where should they connect? And what maybe can you do for them?
Yeah. So again, just with the understanding that my focus is commercial real estate sponsors raising capital, I teach best of class digital marketing strategies. The key is that can be applied to anything, right?
Yeah,
I take them from anything and I apply it to real estate. So
that's
just
it.
reverse engineer that. The
Yeah.
best thing you can do then is go to gowercrowd.com,
Yep.
and on that website is a button that that says subscribe. So go ahead and subscribe to my newsletter. It's free, comes out every week, and I am diligently trying to put
Awesome.
actionable, high value, like read the newsletter and immediately apply how-tos to people so
Excellent.
you can immediately use it. Yeah.
Excellent. Fantastic. Well, I'll make sure I put that in the show notes as well, so everybody has easy access to it. I'm eager to try to just flood your inbox and people to jump in and get on your newsletter.
Thanks.
That would bring me joy. It's been a great conversation. You've opened up my eyes to a lot of things. As you probably saw, I was taking tons of notes already. So appreciate your time, but I do think that we are good to go to conclude with Dr. Adam Gower. Appreciate you being on. And just remember, everyone, nothing is wasted. We'll see you on the next show.